Women are the gatekeepers of sex. We've been hearing that more and more lately. And as with most things, there is some truth to it. But as with most things online, it's gotten a little bit twisted. So let's talk about it. First off, let's get some things straight. Yes, it is true that men and women do have a different relationship, both physically and emotionally, when it comes to sex. But just because men have a different physical risk to sex does not mean that there is no physical risk. And as I pointed out in a video that I recently posted on this page, just because men have a different emotional relationship to sex doesn't mean there's no emotional relationship to sex. Frankly, it's absolutely absurd to think that you can or should, either as a man or a woman, partake in sex, which is the most physical, intimate physical act that two adults can partake in, and not have any emotional tie or any emotional attachment or any emotional consequences to that. While it is true that men cannot get pregnant from sex, I know there's some confusion about that right now. While it's true that men can't get pregnant from sex, and that men maybe don't fall in love via sex in the same way that women do, there's still a risk to men. When we're talking about men going to bed with a woman who's not his wife, he's bringing what is essentially a random woman who he does not know very deeply into his bed, into his home, into his life, maybe into his finances, maybe into the next 18 years of his life. That's a risk to men. So let's stop acting like men have no risk and it's basically just a free-for-all and should be a free-for-all. Setting that aside, a man who spends years of his life chasing women, trying to conquer every single attractive woman that he meets, having the thrill of the chase, the thrill of the hunt, the thrill of bedding her, the sexual variety, that man is hijacking his dopamine reward system. There was a man by the last name of Howerton who spoke about this firsthand and quite eloquently on the Tim Pool Culture War podcast from about 9 months ago. It was him, Tim Pool, and Fresh and Fit. And he spoke about how, yeah, a man gets addicted to that thrill of the chase. And then the idea that he's going to be able to do that for years and years and then settle down when the time is right and he meets the right woman and commit himself sexually to that one woman for the rest of his life and have no issues whatsoever, that is a really destructive notion. So again, there is that physical consequence because we are physical beings driven by dopamine. So why am I saying all this? I'm saying all of this because men should not look to women to just be the gatekeepers. Okay? Yes, women do have more of a physical vulnerability when it comes to sex. Obviously, we also have more of an emotional vulnerability. So saying that women are the gatekeepers of sex does have a place, especially in imparting wisdom to young women to protect themselves, to not look to every man to protect her, to not assume every man is a good man. However, women are the gatekeepers of sex was never meant to be a coverall to excuse men who look around and see hookup culture and hoflation and the general degeneracy that we see in society and then pretend that women somehow have more culpability for that. For an immature man, and this is not a knock on men's maturity level, we all have to mature at certain times in life, man or woman, but for an immature man, for a man who's lost, who's not on his purpose, who's floundering, who's wondering, yes, in that case, women are the gatekeepers of sex. In that case, he is going to take what he can get. In that case, if she doesn't stop him, yeah, he's going to go for it. But for a good man, for a righteous man, for a man who knows why he was put on this earth, and nothing is going to distract him from that mission, he is his own gatekeeper in that case. He does not look to women to be his gatekeeper. And men, respectfully, a woman wants a man who can say no to her sometimes, and especially to other women. Unless she is with you for your money, your status, your title, whatever, if she genuinely loves you, she wants to feel safe with you. And that does not just mean that you're not a physical predator. It means she wants to feel emotionally safe. And she's never going to feel emotionally safe if she's aware of the fact that you can be swayed or tempted by every single passing shiny object. And what you are saying when you say that women are the gatekeepers of sex as a means of suggesting that women have more culpability when it comes to a consensual sexual interaction between a man and a woman, what you are saying is that you are not your own leader. You are not in control of your own ship. That you are essentially being controlled by women who you would call hoes. You're saying that the hoes are in control. And what you're essentially saying is that you're not on your own path in life because you're on this path, but you're going to deviate and go through every single open door just because it's open and it's inviting and nobody told you no. You're essentially equating men to dogs who you can't leave alone with the hot, juicy steak on the counter because, hey, he's a dog and it's a hot, juicy steak and nobody told him no. Mature men tell themselves no. So have more respect for men. And it's also completely ludicrous to suggest that the weaker sex should have more self-control, more self-discipline than you yourself as a man, and this is not all men, but then you yourself as a man are willing or able to cultivate. And you excuse your lack of self-control and self-discipline with, oh, I'm a man and this is just how we're wired, this is just how I'm driven towards sex. But then you expect women to have this self-control and self-discipline, and women are the weaker sex. It makes no sense whatsoever. So this term should not be used to excuse men's absolute equal shared responsibility when we look around and we see hoflation and degeneracy. And the last point that I want to make is that when I see men say this as some type of excuse to suggest that women bear more responsibility for the state of affairs, oftentimes these are Christian conservative men. And I assume these men are pro-life. However, you cannot, in good faith, say women are the gatekeepers of sex as a means of suggesting that, again, in a sexual encounter between a man and a woman, consensual, a woman somehow magically has more responsibility for the fact that that encounter occurred, and then also, at the same breath, say men should have a say in abortion. Those two ideas cannot coexist, okay? If women are indeed more responsible for the consensual sexual encounters that occur between men and women, well then actually women should be pretty much fully responsible for any of the consequences, be they good or bad. And now I'm 100% pro-life and I'm an advocate for men and for fathers, so I don't believe that. I absolutely do believe that men can, should, and must, and do have a say in abortion. But you cannot have it both ways. If you, as a Christian conservative man, recognize the utter erroneousness of no uterus, no opinion, then you also have to recognize the fact that in a consensual sexual encounter between one man and one woman, there's a man's member and there's a woman's part, and they are equally involved in this act. And they are in fact attached to two people who are equal adults, who are equal persons, who have an understanding of the possible physical, emotional, financial ramifications of what they are engaging in for both partners, not just my own ramifications potential, but his as well, or vice versa. And if either partner or both partners don't recognize those risks, then in fact they shouldn't be partaking in the most intimate physical act that two adults can partake in. So women are the gatekeepers of sex has its place, but not as a way of excusing men for where society currently is. And men, this is not a condemnation of you at all, but it's an invitation to maybe look at this from a different perspective, because nothing is ever going to change if men are blaming women and women are blaming men. And if you as a man are waiting for the women around you to be better in order for you to behave better, that's a terrible idea. And I'd say the same thing to a woman. If you are waiting for the men around you to behave better in order for you to be a better woman, that is an awful idea. So you really need to be your own gatekeeper. Again, there's truth to this, but it's not meant to be twisted to suggest that women are more culpable for where we are today. It does take two to tango, not 1.5. One person is not a little bit more responsible. It is two fully grown, fully capable, fully self-aware, hopefully adults.